Yep. Alrighty. How about this for an intro screen? Welcome to the first 2021 edition of Taxes and Retirement Live. As you can see, I have some new toys, some new software here with that slick little intro screen. I can also do a little bit of this. How about this? Look, Taxes and Retirement Live. How about there? And who am I? This is me, Andy Panko, owner, planner, Tenon Financial. So let me make this go away now. Yeah, thank you. So this is my first, oh, here we go. Cool. I see I can do comments here as well. For example, boom, Cody Garrett says hello. How about this? So for those of you interested in commenting along the way, this new slick software will let me show and delete people's comments so I can address them on screen. As I posted before earlier in the group, and you may see a post now that if you want your name to appear, as Cody's does here, you need to opt into allowing this software called StreamYard to let Facebook show your username and profile. Otherwise, it'll look like this. Whoever this is, I don't know. All I see is Facebook user saying fancy schmancy. So thank you. I appreciate the compliment. But whoever posted this, if you want your name and profile pic to be shown, you have to opt in to that link I sent earlier, and there may be a post about it at the bottom of this at this live as well. So exciting stuff. Bear with me. This is my first time using this software in a live environment, so maybe a little bumpy along the way, but hopefully I will get this ironed out fairly soon. One other thing you'll notice before we get into it, yes, there will be dad jokes, but before we get into it, let me just run through my disclosure. Hold on, let me hide this comment from before. Here we go. So back to my disclosure. As you know, I used to just hold up a clipboard that had this, but now we got some fancy stuff here. So this video is only general explanations and education. It is not specific tax, legal, or investment advice. Before considering acting on anything you see in this video, first consult with your tax, legal, or investment advisor. Thank you. Now I will make this go away. And I'm back. How about that? Super cool stuff. This is like some 2030 stuff we're in right here. Dad jokes. Let me start with dad jokes. And special thank you to Cody Garrett. Cody got me this nice Christmas gift. Exceptionally bad dad jokes. So frightfully awful, yet wonderfully spiffing. Thank you, Cody. I will start it off. And these jokes are needed. It's good to see that we're in a new year, but when it starts today, like with a group of thugs who takes over the Capitol building, like we're some kind of joke of a third world democracy, it isn't very, very nice to see that. But hopefully, things will calm down and iron out, and we'll move on. But in the meantime, I got some dad jokes to hopefully brighten your day. First, have you ever heard of a music group called Cellophane? They mostly rap with a W-R-A-P. Get it? Cover your food. Keep it nice. Keep it fresh. Next, what did baby corn say to mama corn? Where's popcorn? Of course. And finally, how does a penguin build its house? It glues it together. Wait for it. Wait for it. Yeah, penguins gluing a house and glue together. The software is amazing. I'm like a kid with a new toy. Okay, so that's the intro. That's the dad jokes. Thank you all. Looks like there's a little bit of flashing going on here. Hopefully that's nothing serious. I don't know if you all can see it. So today's topic is how to find a financial advisor. And what's cool about this software is the software will let me screen share in easily. I got a formal PowerPoint presentation. For those of you who are familiar with his weekly lives, you know, I don't usually run through something formal. It's just me talking with maybe some things I hold up. But this, I actually coincidentally have a presentation I've done before in PowerPoint. So this will be up side by side with me. Let me just get it here. Here we go. How to find a financial advisor. So I want to start, it's sort of the first half of this is really going to be about, before you get into how you can find one, you need to really understand what a financial advisor is, what they do, what they don't do, how they're regulated, how they're paid, because it's a mess of an industry, honestly, with how inconsistent it is, the regulations, the titles, the credentials, the standards of care, which we'll talk about. There's a huge lack of consistency. So let me start by explaining what an advisor is, what an advisor isn't. And you can see here on the screen that, you know, as I roll my mouse over stuff, you can see where I'm pointing. So that's pretty cool. All right. First, And as always, feel free to comment along the way. Now, I suspect, this first half where I'm discussing what an advisor is, just kind of sit back and take it in. And when we get to the point where I actually start discussing how to find an advisor, then obviously, let your questions fly. But until then, I just want to kind of break down for you and give some understanding and background of why it's so difficult to understand and differentiate between advisors, because there's a lot of important differences to be aware of. So first, title means nothing. And what do I mean by that? Well, there's someone called, so take any of these three words here and add after any of these words. So for example, someone calls himself or herself a financial advisor with an O, or a financial advisor with an E, or a financial planner, or financial strategist, or whatever, or retirement strategist, or wealth specialist. These titles mean absolutely nothing. There is zero rules or regulations or restrictions around who gives themselves these names. At one extreme, you go to Applebee's, the person waiting your table can call himself or herself a wealth advisor. There's no rules or laws stopping that. Unlike in the medical industry, if someone says they're a doctor, not a PhD like a historian, but a medical doctor, when someone says they're a doctor, you know what that means, right? You know that they had to have gone to a certain amount of medical school. They had to have passed a standardized licensing test. They need to maintain credentials and et cetera, have a certain amount of insurance and whatever. So it means something to say you're a doctor. It similarly means something to say you're a lawyer. It means you must have gone to law school, graduated law school. You practice law, you're licensed by at least one state bar association. So there's standardization, there's a minimum set of requirements and meaning behind being a doctor, being a lawyer. There's zero of that in the financial industry. So the words, the name someone gives themselves mean absolutely nothing. Disregard that. The most generic, and I'll just generically say financial advisor for purposes of this presentation, but as you'll see, that really means nothing. You have to drill down to all these things we're going to talk about to figure out what exactly is this person doing. Okay, so let me just see the comments here. Okay, looks like comments are still here. Last comment seems to be from 805. Let me just check. Apologies here. I just want to see if there were other comments that I'm not seeing on my portal but are posted here. Yeah, it looks like possibly. Okay. Interesting. So comments may be bogged down or at least not refreshing for some reason, perhaps, which isn't cool. All right. All right, here we go. So I just see a comment from Cody. Looks like there's a 5-minute gap. And then Cody says, financial coach is my favorite, smiley emoticon. Yeah, okay. So it looks like some comments work at least. I don't know why not all of them, but anyway. So yeah, for the most part, kind of hold your comments towards the end if you don't mind. And hopefully the comments end up working. If not, I'll jump back into Facebook so I can actually see them and we'll go from there. Okay, right. So disregard the title because title means absolutely nothing. In every sense of the word, it means nothing. There's no restrictions around it. Also, another sort of misconception, misunderstanding. When someone thinks of financial advisor, the first thing you think of is often investment manager. I got this guy or this woman who picks investments and hopefully beats the market for me. Now, historically, that was commonly the case where it wasn't much more than just someone who would manage your investments. They go pick a bunch of individual stocks for you. And then mutual funds came in fashion. So maybe they start picking mutual funds for you. And now, mutual funds, ETFs, whatever. So yes, there are some advisors who focus primarily on just managing your investments. Now, what their strategy is could be all over the map, whether they actively stock pick, individual companies, or like me, they just, they invest in 3 to 5 super simple, super low cost index-based products. Don't try to make it any unnecessarily or more complicated than it needs to be. But it's a lot more than just investments. Some are just investments, but just because someone says they're an advisor doesn't mean all they do is manage money and pick stocks or bonds for you. There's any sort of financial area of your life, there's many of these areas. A financial advisor could be someone who helps you with all those things, such as taxes. There's tax implications to virtually every financial decision in your life. So advisors could work with taxes, and not just tax return preparers. That's kind of its own industry. They're really just tasked with the job of putting together a compliant tax return to submit to the IRS and state taxing authorities for you. Most tax return preparers don't really do tax planning. They're not going to walk you through, okay, here's what you can do, over the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years to save you long-term taxes. For the most part, and not all of them, but for the most part, most tax return preparers are just, their goal is to do your return this year, minimize your taxes this year, and then don't really do any longer term planning. But anyway, so there's tax return preparers, and then there's advisors who may focus on doing some more tax planning. Point is, it's not just investments. There's taxes that advisors can work on. Insurance, estate planning, retirement is its own sort of niche within the financial planning world. College funding. I have a good friend who does late stage college funding. That's his whole target. He works with people whose kids are getting close to college, and he helps them figure out financial plans to help pay for college. Housing, healthcare, general budgeting. There's financial coaches, which, as Cody brought up, financial coaches generally have zero regulation. Anyone can call himself or herself a coach. Now, where they can't cross the line, they can't talk about investments at all in any sense of the word. They just can give you basic like budgeting guidance and helping you deal with the emotional aspects of money, things like that. That's like a financial coach. And then even employee benefits. So point is, when you think of advisor, don't think about just, oh, this is someone picking mutual funds for me. Now, most advisors will and can and should give you advice on your investments. But frankly, the investment management piece is one of the smallest value adds a good advisor has. Because I say this all the time, these three words: good investment management has become increasingly cheap, easy, and commoditized to do and do well. You don't need to pay a lot for someone in a fancy wood-paneled office to spend 80 hours a week mining over research to pick stocks. No, there's so many good, easy, low-cost, effective pooled investment options like mutual funds and exchange-traded funds. That's all most people really need. You don't need to complicate it and get fancy with trying to guess and market time and whatever. So anyway, yes, an advisor can be someone who manages investments, but it should be so much more than just investments, because that's frankly one of the smaller value adds a good advisor can bring. All right, moving on. So why is it so difficult to find an advisor or even to understand what an advisor does? Well, it's because there's currently no standardization across the industry of titles, like we mentioned, of regulation. I'll mention that briefly in a moment. Standard of care, suitability versus being fiduciary. I'll touch on that. The products and services offered can be drastically different. How advisors are compensated could be all over the map. There's, for the most part, no minimum level of education, experience, or credentials required. Most of these places, all you need to get a license is not be a convicted criminal, and usually, at least have graduated high school. But outside of that, I don't think to get any of these licenses or requirements that you necessarily need to have even college education, though practically most people in industry will. Thankfully, at least, there is a push, not quite a concerted effort, but the industry, clients, advisors alike are all sort of realizing, to help all of us out collectively, we need to kind of rein this in. The financial industry has a lot of blemishes on its record. There's been a lot of dubious characters and practices throughout the course of managing money and selling financial products and stuff like that. So people realize the industry's got to get streamlined, more efficient, more transparent, more standardized. So things are slowly happening to make things better, but it's still a very disjointed, very different landscape across all the different advisor types. So let's talk about regulation. Other than financial coach, which again, anyone can call himself or herself a coach, there's no governing body that oversees that. In order to give any sort of financial advice for compensation, you need to be registered in at least one of three ways. And this is it for registration types. One, as an insurance agent, pretty straightforward. They are licensed by each respective state in which they operate to sell insurance products, life insurance, annuities, and then like property and casualty, auto insurance, homeowners, whatever. Second is securities brokerage. These are people nationally regulated by a body called FINRA, which is Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. These are the traditional stockbrokers, people who are able to sell you a stock and make a commission on it, sell you bonds, sell you a mutual fund and make a commission on it. Those are securities brokers. And then third is investment advisors. These are people historically that their job is to take the responsibility of overseeing and making decisions on your investment accounts on your behalf. It's still your accounts. These are just the people who are deciding what should be bought and sold within the accounts. So that's three. You have to be registered at least one of the three ways: insurance agent, securities broker, investment advisor. All right, let's keep that in mind for now. Let me see. Okay, it looks like comments are definitely working here. Undisclosed Facebook user. Do the initial CFA and CFP mean anything? Yes, hold that thought. I have a couple slides on that about the designations or alphabet soup you often see after names. My name being one of them. I have 9 different letters after my name. I'll explain what they mean. So that's regulation. You need to be regulated one of 3 ways if you're giving any sort of financial advice for money. Again, financial coach is different. Financial coach, they absolutely cannot discuss specific securities, investments, investment strategies. All they can do is discuss like budgeting and helping you tactics to save and discussing, the emotional aspects of dealing with money and things like that. All right, next, standard of care. What does this mean? In conducting business with clients, advisors need to abide by one of 2 standards. One is suitability. That means they're required to act in the best interest of the company they represent. The advice they give or the product they recommend to the client does not need to be in the best interest of the client. It only needs to be quote unquote suitable. What does suitable mean? It's kind of sad. Suitable means so long as the recommendation isn't so egregiously bad or dangerous for the client, it's suitable, it's good enough. That's a suitability standard. The other one is a fiduciary standard. That means the advisor at all times needs to act and make recommendations that are truly in the best interest of the client, even if they're not in the best interest of the advisor or the advisor's company. So client needs to always be first. That's like a doctor or a lawyer. Now, not to say there's not bad apples in all walks of life in all industries, but doctors and lawyers are legally obligated and ethically obligated to give you advice that's in your best interest. They represent you, not product sales companies, not anyone else. They need to do and say what's best for you. Does it always happen? Unfortunately not, but at least legally they're required to. Same thing in financial services. Anyone who's legally regulated as a fiduciary needs to act in your best interest at all times, even if it means that decision isn't the best or the most profitable for the advisor or for the advisor's company. Those are standards of care. Standards of care. All right. Recall, and I'll keep circling back to, again, you're going to have one or multiple of these 3 areas of regulation: insurance sales, security / brokerage sales, investment advisory. Insurance agents are legally required to act under a suitability standard, meaning you go to buy a life insurance policy from, I won't try not to name companies here, from a large major insurance company, let's just say. They are required to sell you or recommend you something that's not egregiously bad for you. It just needs to be good enough for you. It doesn't need to be the best. There can be another product that costs you less but does the same thing. They're legally allowed to recommend to you the higher cost product if it means their company or themselves get more money from it. That's what suitability ultimately means. Again, it can't be so disastrously bad for you. They can't do that. Or if they do, you have really good grounds for a lawsuit against them. But, extreme example, they're not even extreme, but common example, product A, product B do the exact same thing. Product B pays a larger commission. An insurance agent can sell you product B, and that's legally fine. They don't need to say, hey, this one does the same but costs less. That's suitability. Securities brokers, same thing. When they're selling a product, selling a stock, a bond, a mutual fund for a commission, the product they're recommending to you does not need to be in your best interest. It only needs to be quote unquote suitable, AKA good enough for you. Same thing, if there's 2 products that do the functionally exact same investment, one has a higher fee or pays a higher commission, they can recommend you that over the other one. That's completely fine under the suitability standard. The common denominator between insurance agent regulations and good old-fashioned stockbroker / security broker regulations is their product sales. They represent the companies they work for. They don't represent you. That's why they have to act in the best interest of their company, not the best interest of you. Now, it's not to say that a product or recommendation can't coincidentally be both in the company's best interest and yours. If that's the case, great, everybody wins. But if and when there are inevitably, these different products where one pays more, an insurance salesperson or a security salesperson can recommend you the higher expense product, then that's completely fine because it's quote unquote suitable. The third area of regulation, again, was investment advisors. They need to act as fiduciaries at all times. They cannot, like doctors and lawyers, they cannot recommend you option A over option B just because option A will pay them more. If option B is truly better for you, for whatever the reason is, they need to recommend to you option B as opposed to option A. Now, again, people aren't perfect, regulations aren't perfect, enforcement's not perfect. It doesn't mean there's not bad apples or at least lots of gray area where things get questionable. But at least legally speaking, it's good to know that people who are regulated as investment advisors are legally bound to act in your best interest. If they don't, and you're harmed from it, you have really good grounds for a lawsuit. Whereas with like insurance sales, because they're only acting suitably, if they sell you something that ends up not being so great for you, chances are you're not going to have a great case against them because they can say, well, for reasons A, B, C, this product was good enough. It was suitable. So fine. I absolve myself from you claiming it didn't turn out the way you expected. So, you're going to sue me. It doesn't quite work like that. All right. So that's the standards of care. Facebook user, where do Robo Advisors fit into all this? I'll get to that as well. Great question. All right, moving along. Product and service offerings. So those are the differences in standards of care. Now the differences in product and service offerings. People who are regulated and employed solely as insurance agents, no surprise, they sell insurance. They sell life insurance. They sell annuities. They sell property and casualty insurance, which is homeowners, auto, renters insurance, things like that. Securities brokers. There's not a lot of pure brokers anymore. And I'll tell you what I mean by pure. So pure brokers, think back to the days and like the movies like Boiler Room from the late 90s. These chop shop stockbrokers where all they do is just it's a room full of really eager sales folks on phones, cold calling people across America, trying to sell them, hey, I got this hot tip on company XYZ. You want to buy something? Great. They're out just to pump you, sell you particular shares of something. If and when you sign up to buy those shares, they get a commission of it, whatever that commission is. There's no advising, there's no whatever. They're just out to sell you that product. That product is stock A, bond B, mutual fund C, whatever. There's not a lot of pure just stock brokers anymore like that. But if and when there were, and if there still are, they're registered as securities brokers. They sell securities, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, exchange traded funds, real estate investment trusts, REITs. Those are brokers. That's what they sell. That's their business. And then investment advisors. So traditional investment advisors, you all probably more or less know what they do. They help you oversee your portfolio. They will recommend to you, you should buy this versus that. You should sell this, whatever. Now, often the relationship is called discretionary, meaning you give authority to that person to trade on your behalf without having to run it all by you. But that's investment advisory. Now, here's where things get interesting. People who do financial planning, like they don't necessarily manage investments, or even if they do, they also give financial planning. Like you can just talk with them about advice about the rest of your financial life. Their registration will lie as an investment advisor. If all you do is financial advice, you're not selling insurance, you're not selling brokerage products, you're not going to have those first two licenses here. You'll be registered as an investment advisor. And this is why things are kind of clunky. Financial planning is just like the giving of financial advice. It doesn't need to be managing investments. It doesn't need to be selling insurance. It's just, you have questions about finances, come to this person, they can charge you for their time. That's financial planning, financial advice, if you will. There is no standalone regulation for financial planners. Financial planning historically wasn't its own thing. It just kind of got, indirectly bolted on to being regulated as investment advisors because the SEC didn't know where else to put it. Like, what is financial planning? We don't know what to do with it. Let's just call it investment advisors. We'll make them get registered as investment advisors. So point is, on the very bottom of the slide, I'm saying people who are registered as investment advisors aren't just necessarily stock, bond, and mutual fund pickers. They could be just general financial advice givers. That's why I'm saying they could also offer standalone financial advice, not necessarily tied to investment management. All right, products and services. Another Facebook comment, CFP versus RIA versus RICP. Yeah, good question. I'll comment on that in a bit. Briefly about RIA. So, whoever this generic Facebook user is who posted this, CFP versus RIA versus RICP. So RIA isn't a designation. I'll explain what designations are. RIA stands for Registered Investment Advisory. Any company that's regulated as an investment advisor is technically legally called an RIA, Registered Investment Advisory. That's all that means. It's not like some special extra designation you get. It's just saying this company is registered as an investment advisor. Whereas CFP and RICP are separate designations, professional designations, which I'll touch on. So coming back to products and services, digging a little more into financial planning, what is it? It is hard to explain financial planning. It's kind of everything about all aspects of your financial life, not just investments, not just insurance. It's kind of everything. It's a comprehensive view of all the financial things of your life. As we mentioned on previous slides, insurance, budgeting, estate planning, taxes, retirement, college funding, employee benefits, investments, what have you. That's all financial planning. Okay. To drill down even further, some advisors have very specific focuses. Some financial planners / advisors have specific focuses on what they do. So it could be by subject matter. For example, I focus purely on retirement planning. Those that are at the cusp of retirement or in retirement. I generally don't work with anyone who's more than a few years away from retirement. It's a different stage of life with different planning needs. I focus squarely on, I got this big nest egg. What do I do with it? How do I spend it? When and why? How does Social Security tie into this? How does trying to get health insurance before Medicare tie into this? How do taxes, doing all this tax efficiently? That's what I do. That's retirement planning. Some people focus just on college funding. Like I said, I have a good friend, late stage college funding. That's his niche. People work just with federal employees and know the federal benefit system inside and out. There's another advisor I'm thinking of. Her niche is women in tech. She focuses on, as the name implies, generally women who work in tech companies. Most such people have some sort of stock-based compensation. So she knows stock compensation, stock options really well. International matters. I generally don't get involved at all in international financial or tax matters because I don't know what I don't know. It's a whole separate can of worms. Some advisors focus just on that. They make that their wheelhouse. So you can have all sorts of different specializations. So when you go looking for an advisor, you need to figure out what's important to you, what are your unique needs, so you can then go find that person. And I promise I'll get to how, where do you go to find advisors. But I just want to run through again why there's so much to think about. You can't just generically say advisor and go from there. Some advisors focus on client types. I'll run through this quickly. There's people who work just with dentists, just with commercial pilots, believe it or not, just with teachers, just with women in transition. I know of an advisor, that's her niche, women in transition. So recently divorced, recent death, something like that. And yes, there is an advisor. I don't know him personally, but I've learned of someone who works almost exclusively with professional fishermen. Yes, you can have a niche that focused in your advisory practice. All right, methods of compensation. This is big. Again, sort of circles back to, you need to understand in which of the three ways is this person regulated. Insurance agents who have insurance licenses, when they sell insurance products, they are paid on a commission from the product that they sell. Oftentimes, you the buyer, don't directly pay that commission. The commission's paid from the company whose product was sold. Now, indirectly, you're paying because that's not free. So, the cost of the product, what you ultimately pay for the product, indirectly has that compensation, that commission baked in somehow. But the point is, you don't really pay directly. The insurance salesperson gets paid a commission on what they sell to you. Exact same thing with securities brokers, a traditional stockbroker, right? Someone cold calls you in the middle of the night and says, hey, buy 100 shares of this, and you buy those 100 shares, you're not directly paying that broker anything. They're getting paid a commission from whatever company is brokering those securities. And then investment advisors, they can get paid in a few ways. And here's where things get a little confusing. The typical, let me just manage your investment advisor will say, put all of your assets into an account here, Schwab, Fidelity, TD Ameritrade, whatever. However many assets are in there, I'm going to charge you 1% per year on it. And every year or every quarter, my fee just comes out of those accounts. So investment advisors can charge that way. Or they can also charge, that's pretty common when people manage investments. For those that don't manage investments, or even some of those who do, they can instead charge by hourly fees. Not very common, but there's some out there. Flat fees, like what I do, for example, ongoing planning and investment management. I don't do this % of AUM nonsense. I just do, it's a flat annual fee. Boom, here's what we do. Whether you got $1 million or $3 million, the fee is the same. Imagine that. Or it can be, there's some called a subscription or retainer model, which is, as the name implies, you pay, and this is generally more for younger generations who don't have lots of assets or don't have super hairy planning needs. You can pay $100, $200, $300, $400 a month, literally kind of as a subscription-based service that you can cancel whenever for financial advice from someone who's regulated as an investment advisor. All right. So that's methods of compensation. And I should say, so far I've been keeping things clearly delineated. You have insurance salespeople, you have securities brokers, you have investment advisors. Neat and pretty. This is why things are so complicated. In practice, lots of, again, I'm just using the word advisor generically, lots of financial professionals will have multiple of these registrations. So let me just go forward a slide. What do I have here? Okay, yeah. For example, every big name brokerage you've ever heard of, I'm going to name names, and I'm not singling any of them out. Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, UBS, Edward Jones, Wells Fargo, Chase, JP Morgan. Those are the big ones. They all have multiple licenses, and they can operate under multiple of these models. They will all have various securities licenses. They're securities brokers in that sense. They'll typically also have investment advisory licenses. Now, go back to when I said, remember, standard of care. People who sell insurance, people who sell securities do not need to act in your best interest when they are recommending or consummating those product sales. People who are acting as investment advisors legally need to act in your best interest at all times. Sounds great, right? Here's where it gets real murky real fast. You work with someone at Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, Edward Jones, whatever. They're going to have brokerage licenses. They're going to have investment advisory licenses. How do you know, that one person will have multiple licenses? You're sitting down looking at your advisor at one of these big national places. How do you know if he or she is wearing the securities broker hat, acting only suitably, or instead wearing the investment advisor hat, acting in your best interest? The line blurs, and it kind of depends what they're doing at the moment. So for example, when that person is discussing with you, if they're overseeing your portfolio and discussing with you, I would recommend you buy fund ABC because your allocation needs to be 60-40 as opposed to 50-50, then they're probably wearing the investment advisor hat. But guess what? Now when it comes time to, okay, we agreed on the allocation, let's talk products. If they now say, hey, we got this, this shiny new mutual fund, I think you should buy this because it does this, that, and the other. Well, guess what? They could have switched hats. Now they're wearing their securities broker hat. This product they're selling you could be unnecessarily expensive because it's good enough, because it's suitable, right? So you frankly don't know when you're working with those big shops, are you acting in my best interest right now or are you not? And here's a way to tell. If you sign up or you interview any of these places that you've ever heard of, these big national brokerages, and ask them to put in writing that you will act in my best interest at all times, they're not going to do it because they can't do it. Because there will be times, and I don't mean this to vilify them, I'm just saying this is how, fluid and ambiguous and sort of disjointed this whole industry is. They can't say to you, yes, we are fiduciaries at all times. They can't say we are legally required to act in your best interest at all times, because they're not. Because there will be moments where they're discussing a product sale and now their broker hat's on, and now they're only acting under the suitability standard, not the best interest fiduciary standard that they're acting under when they're carrying out investment advisory duties. Clear as mud, right? And it's almost sickening how fragile and disjointed this whole thing is. All right. Sorry, I get worked up about this. Okay, so that's important to know. That just because there's 3 different forms of regulation doesn't mean an advisor is only one of the 3. There are clean-cut cases. Someone that only works at a life insurer and only sells life insurance. Guess what? All they do is sell insurance. They're not going to have the brokerage license. They're not going to have investment advisory license. And there's people who only do investment advisory and will only have that regulation. All right. Moving on. Professional designations. So this is just my objective discussion about this, but I lump them into, and there's endless amounts of letters, these letters and designations you see after people's names. Some are absolute fluff. Some are legitimately difficult, meaningful designations. I break them down into major and minor. And again, these are my subjective, I may have said objective before. These are my subjective classifications of these various designations. So there's major, and major are ones that are like legitimate, serious commitments of time, of knowledge, of experience, and even money to obtain. Minor ones, not so much. Not saying they're a joke necessarily, but they're usually cheaper, easier, faster to get, so they don't necessarily mean as much, in my opinion. And all of these things are completely optional. Unlike the regulations, again, to give advice for money, you need to be regulated one of 3 ways: insurance sales, brokerage sales, investment advisor. All these designations are completely optional. Why do advisors get them? It shows, a commitment to learn. And most of these things have ongoing, continuing education requirements to meet. So it shows an ongoing commitment to stay at least, minimally involved and staying fresh on stuff. It shows you're focused. You can pick which designations you want to evidence, look, this is what I do. This is my niche. I have this designation to prove, like, this is what I know and this is what I focus on. All right, so let's get into it. The major ones. So there's 3 major designations that involve comprehensive financial planning. You'll learn a little bit about everything. CFP, Certified Financial Planner, Chartered Financial Consultant, and Personal Financial Specialist. Just quick side note, the only people who can get the PFS are those who already have the CPA, which I'll touch on in a moment. So these 3 things, CFP, CHFC, and PFS, if someone has that, it means they went through a minimum level of formal education in the topic. They passed at least one big standardized test. There's an experience requirement. You have at least a handful of years doing relevant activities, financial planning activities. And they all have some sort of annual continuing education requirement to stay fresh on topics. So those are certified financial planning. In my opinion, anyone who considers himself a financial planner or wants to be a financial planner, you need to have one of these 3. Not to say you can't be sharp and can't be really good if you don't, but this is, in my mind, this is sort of the minimum table stakes to call yourself a financial planner, is to get one of these 3 designations. Now, CFP is, people call it the gold standard. Honestly, the CHFC is as rigorous in my opinion. PFS, I don't know much about, honestly, but I think it's comparably rigorous from what I gathered. But CFP is the most known. And that's partly because, for better or worse, the CFP board that runs it has put a lot of money into promoting it. So you may recognize, you've seen commercials for CFP over the last handful of years. There's no single standard designation. There's a bunch of competing ones. CFP is sort of emerging as sort of the gold, I don't want to say, the most predominant, the most preeminent one is CFP. But nonetheless, anyone who has any one of these 3 designations has at least like the basic level of knowledge you want to have in an advisor who calls himself or herself a comprehensive financial planner. Tax, there's 2 specific to tax. CPA, I think everyone's heard about, Certified Public Accountant, and IRS Enrolled Agent. Quick difference. So CPAs, again, everyone's heard of CPAs. You probably think of someone who does taxes. Well, yes, CPA has 4 bodies of knowledge, only one of which is like tax returns. The other 3 is auditing, preparing business financial statements, and one is like general business environment. So CPA honestly is kind of overkill for doing taxes for individual tax returns, because really only 1/4 of the body of knowledge to get the CPA is really directly related to doing income tax returns. But anyway, so that's CPA. CPAs are governed by their respective states in which they operate. And there's IRS enrolled agent. That is a license put out by the IRS itself, just about income taxation. So individual income tax, business income tax, and then general sort of like tax return preparer regulations and best practices. So both CPA and EA, hard to get, required good amount of education, and then there's tests to do all this stuff. Regarding investment management, hands down, the CFA, Chartered Financial Analyst, is the gold standard of knowledge and extreme difficulty in obtaining for investment management. Overkill in most cases, especially for people who just need some, what I say relatively basic portfolio of a handful of well-picked funds. CFA is going to be overkill, but nonetheless, anyone who has a CFA is real sharp and has an extreme amount of dedication, because that's an incredibly difficult designation to get. Insurance specific is a chartered life underwriter. And I'm not an expert in estate planning designations, but from what I see, in my opinion, the designation that's the most serious and difficult to get relating to estate planning is the accredited estate planner. Now, you don't need to be a lawyer to get that. You need to be a lawyer to practice executing estate planning documents like wills and stuff. But just to give like general guidance and recommendations about estate planning, you don't have to be a lawyer. You can get a designation like this that boosts your knowledge and expertise in that. All right, David Fultz, I see a comment from you. And David, thank you for registering your name. What is the important value add of an advisor? Man, that's a huge question, David Fultz. It's a great question, though. It's kind of everything. Hold that thought. I'll get to that. Hopefully some of this comes out through my musings across all this, but it's a whole bunch of things, David Fultz. So hold that thought. Now, some of the minor designations, I won't spend too much time here. Excuse me. And what does minor mean again? It just means it's not, in my opinion, they're not as difficult to achieve as the major ones that we just went through. So in investment management, there's one called SEMA. Not a joke to get, but not nearly as difficult as CFA. Wealth management. What's wealth management? A lot of people call themselves wealth managers. What is that? Again, these are all sort of subjective terms. Wealth management generally means financial planning, so like comprehensive viewing and advising on sort of all aspects of your financial life. But wealth management is usually more slanted towards higher net worth people who have, the more money you have, the more problems you have. When you have $10+ million, you start to need to worry more about estate planning, because when you die with $10 million left in your name, there can be chunky estate taxes. So that's kind of like a unique angle that most people that, I don't want to say only have $1 million or $2 million, but you don't really have to worry about that if you only have $1 million. Wealth management is also more about like charitable giving. People who give hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, or wanted to create generational wealth. Make sure their heirs and their heirs have this boatload of wealth to pass on. Wealth management is more about how to optimize and make that happen. So kind of the higher net worth planning needs is wealth management. Is the way to think about it. So anyway, there's two designations for that. Retirement specific. There's two that are more or less the same thing, just from different organizations. Neither one is really better or worse. RICP, Retirement Income Certified Professional, and RMA, Retirement Management Advisor. So all these like sort of subject specific designations kind of pick up where like the CFP leaves off. So the CFP and those two other general broad these weekly things always are. So whereas the CFP, it kind of touches on everything. It's a little bit about taxes, estate planning, insurance, investments, education, retirement planning. These designations take it, grab a particular subject and get into more detail above and beyond the CFP. So like RICP, which is one I have, is all specific to retirement. It's more about annuities and Social Security and Medicare and federal retiree benefits, distribution strategies, things like that. Long-term care. That's what the RICP covers, and the RMA for that matter. Things specific to retirees or those near retirement. Yes, there's a designation specific to divorce, CDFA, and Social Security, the NSSA, National Social Security Advisor. All right, so those are the designations. Hopefully that cleared that up. Again, all these ones we just ran through, completely optional. No one has to have any of these. You do it to show I put the work in. I have additional knowledge and expertise in this area, as evidenced by having obtained this designation. All right. Okay, so how to now go about finding the right advisor for you? What have I got here? Okay. So again, hold that thought. All right, so let's go. Before we start, let's talk about conflicts of interest. Regardless how an advisor is regulated, insurance sales, security sales, investment advisor, and how they're compensated, commission, percent of assets, flat fee, hourly fee, whatever, there's no conflict-free compensation model. There's always some inherent conflict of interest. In my opinion, there's different levels of conflict of interest. For example, starting at the top, I call them advisors, but product salespeople who are compensated mainly or solely from commissions on selling you product. What's their incentive? Obviously, to sell you product. If they don't sell product, they don't get sold. Think about going to like a car dealership, right? Even if they were to call themselves a transportation advisor, you'll see right through that nonsense. You go, and I saw Cody posted something like this before. Let's say you live in a densely populated urban area. You don't even know if you need a car. You know you need a way to get around point A to point B, but you don't know what your options are. You walk into a Ford dealer because the person behind the desk calls himself or herself a transportation advisor. You're going to see right through it. You know that person's there to sell you a Ford. They're not there to sell you a Toyota. They're not even there to say, you know what, maybe you don't need a car. Maybe your best transportation option is to take the bus or buy a bike or walk, right? So they're not a transportation advisor. They're there to sell you product. That's like an insurance salesperson calling himself or herself a financial advisor. It's bunk, right? If they're solely just an insurance salesperson. So anyway, so I'm getting off on a rant here, sorry. So there's clearly a conflict of interest when people are compensated solely from selling you a product. In some cases, it's evident, like going to a Ford dealer. In some cases, it's not. Like you go to a seminar put on by someone calling himself a financial advisor who's just there to sell you an annuity. They get paid from selling that annuity, not from giving you advice. Again, I'm on a rant, sorry. Yeah, I just sidetracked myself. Okay, so right. So it clearly inherent conflict of interest in getting paid by commission. Even those that are paid by percent of assets under management. Now, legally, if you're solely registered as an investment advisor, you're required to act as a what? As a fiduciary at all times. That means in the best interest of the client at all times. Well, guess what? If your compensation is solely off of the size of the client's assets, you can't tell me there's not some human nature conflict there. If a client has $500,000 in an account with you, the advisor, and the client says, hey, should I take out 200 grand to pay off my mortgage? Well, guess what happens to that advisor's compensation if you take that 200 grand out to pay off your mortgage? It drops by 2/5. That's real money. Now, again, the right answer is the advisor shouldn't say, no, leave it in purely because he or she's going to make more money. His or her advice and recommendation needs to be in your best interest. But you can see there's going to be lots of these decisions where it's like, oh man, if the client takes that 400 grand out, that's 4,000 less dollars of revenue I'm going to make this year. You can see how that would put even the most morally sound person in a bit of a pickle. Unless they got so much clients in business, they don't really care. Not that they don't care, but then it's a different story. But you can see where the conflict arises is my point. And even hourly isn't conflict free because someone's paid by the hour. What's to say they don't just like hang out and run the clock on you and kind of, kick their feet up. So that's conflicted as well. So point is, there's no conflict free model. I personally feel like the commission only model is the worst of the conflict. The percent of assets under management, probably the next worst. And then after that is like the hourly and the flat fee. Again, not perfect. There's still inherent conflicts, but I feel like the least conflicted at least. And finally, a word about fee only. This is a word that's thrown around a lot, often as kind of a marketing gimmick, sort of. So what does fee only mean? Fee only means the advisor's sole regulation is that of an investment advisor. They do not have any insurance or brokerage regulations or licenses. That means they cannot sell any products for commission because they simply don't have the legal ability to. They are paid solely from you, the client, whether it's from percent of assets under management, that's from you, or if it's an hourly fee or a flat fee. Point is, their compensation comes solely from you. There's no commissions from products. There's no backdoor incentives from, like you go to a bank, they open up bank accounts, for every 100 bank accounts they open, well, guess what? The bank clerk gets, $100 bonus or something. There's none of that. There's no incentive other than to get paid from the client. That's fee only. So fee only, again, will not have any brokerage licenses, will not have any insurance licenses. They'll be regulated solely as investment advisors. Guess what? That precludes every single name brand bank, brokerage, and insurance company you ever heard of from being fee only. Every insurance company right off the bat, Northwestern Mutual, AXA Equitable, New York Life, MetLife, Mass Mutual, the list goes on. They're not fee only. They never will be. They have insurance. They have licenses to sell insurance. The big brokers, Merrill, Morgan Stanley, UBS, JP Morgan, whatever, they all have brokerage licenses. They will never be fee only. It's only the investment advisory only places and financial planners who are regulated under investment advisor regulations. Those are the only ones who can ever say they're fee only. Now, realizing the world, clients are picking up on this fee only concept and the conflict of commissions and things like that, these big brokers and insurance places are getting cute. They will have, in addition to selling insurance and brokerage products, they'll also have advisory services they can offer, but they can never be fee only because they still have the other licenses. So they get cute. They'll say we're fee based, or we're hybrid, or we're fee and commission. That just means they get the best of both worlds. They can charge you a percent of assets on your investments they oversee, and they can sell you an insurance or a commission mutual fund and get a commission on it because they wear both those hats. They're fee-based, they're fee and commission, they're hybrid, all right? So that's fee only. Fee only is not the same as fee-based, fee and commission, or hybrid. All right. Robo Advisors. Someone's asking about Robo Advisor. I had a slide about that. What did I do with it? Maybe I did. Maybe I took it out because the slide deck was like 40 pages long. Hold that thought. That's coming up about Robo Advisors. That came up faster than I thought. Look at that. Here we are. All right. So how to find an advisor. I'm oversimplifying it, but there's basically 2 steps. One, now knowing what you know about the different regulations, about the different fee structures, about the different niches of products and services and client types that they work with, offered, visualize which advisor you think will be best for you and your needs, what you need. Do you just need to buy insurance? If you do, call up an insurance company. Don't mess around looking for an advisor. Just cut to the chase. Find someone who will sell you insurance. If you only want or need someone to make investment picking decisions for you, all you need is an investment advisor. You don't want or need someone who's licensed to sell you insurance. You don't want or need someone who's licensed to sell you some expensive mutual fund or real estate investment trust. You just want someone to give you independent advice about your investments. With that said, if you do want or need the true investment only route, there's a couple ways you can go. Robo Advisor is one of them, as a couple people have commented on. What's a Robo Advisor? A Robo Advisor is an online platform. There's like Betterment, there's Wealthfront, there's a few others, and I'm not recommending one versus the other. Just Betterment and Wealthfront are the 2 big ones. You don't talk with a live person unless you pay extra, but the base offering is for 0.3% of your assets with them. There's basically a robot behind the scenes. They'll run you through like this risk tolerance questionnaire and ask you some other questions and say, okay, you should be in 80% stocks, 20% bonds. They will then create for you a portfolio, usually a handful of exchange traded funds. And that's it. That's what they do. And now every month, every quarter, whatever, they'll go in and rebalance as the stocks run up a lot. They'll have to sell some stocks, buy more bonds to get you back to your 80-20 allocation. They're all doing that automatically. In effect, a robot's doing it. It's some computer algorithm. And then the other thing they do, which is nice, is what's called tax loss harvesting. So if you have a regular taxable brokerage account, the algorithm won't just go willy-nilly sell stuff in your account, because when you sell things in a regular brokerage account, there could be taxable gains or tax-saving losses. The algorithms will know, okay, if we're going to sell this, well, let's pair it up with this. Like, let's try to flatten out. We're selling this at a gain, this at a loss. let's not hit this client with a big tax bill. Let's flatten these out so there's like no or minimal tax impact. A Robo Advisor does that. So that's what a Robo Advisor is. All it does is pick a broad allocation of stocks versus bonds. It puts you in a portfolio of a handful of funds to get you that allocation. It'll do rebalancing automatically, and it'll do tax loss harvesting in your taxable brokerage account. That's it. There's no additional services or bells or whistles. If that's all you want or need, fine. That works just splendidly. And again, it's 0.3% typically of your assets under management. So do the math. You got $1 million with a Robo Advisor, it'll be $3,000 an annual fee. So for people who want pure investment advice only, you don't want hand-holding, you don't want a live person, you don't want any other financial planning about insurance or estate planning or distribution strategies or taxes or education planning, Robo Advisor might be all you need. Just investment management, done. Okay. What if you do still want just investment management, but you want a real live person to talk with? That's where you get a more traditional investment manager, again, living, breathing person who makes the decisions for you in your portfolio. Now, he or she may be functionally doing the same thing a Robo Advisor does, because Robo Advisors do it really well. And I frankly invest in that same philosophy. Minimal number of funds, keep them simple, keep them low cost, keep them tax efficient. That's all most people need. Anything more than that is unnecessary sizzle and flash. It usually doesn't provide value, at least not enough to justify the additional fees. So anyway, so if you want a real live person, you're going to pay extra. Again, the robo platforms are usually about 0.3% of your assets. A real live person is typically 0.8% to 1%, on the high end, 1.5% of your assets. What do you get for that? So you get the pure investment management, and more importantly, or not more importantly, but another big value add is someone to help talk you off the ledge when you get nervous and are about to make a bad decision. Like in March when stocks dropped, that was the worst time to sell, but lots of people did because they got scared, and rightfully so. It's human nature. But an advisor can be that trusted person that hopefully emotionless. They'll take the emotion out of the decision-making process for you. That'll give you unbiased guidance and help stop you from being your own worst enemy. Because had you sold at the end of March and sat on the sidelines until June, you lost out a lot. A good advisor could have helped you through that. So that's what you get. Part of what you get when you pay for someone you can actually call up and talk to. You do not get that with the robos like Betterment or Wealthfront, because there is no person. It's a computer. If you want to talk to a person, it's extra service you have to pay for. And what else do advisors do? Oftentimes investment advisors will throw in some light financial planning, some general guidance and goal setting. But people who primarily focus on investments don't get heavy into the distribution planning of retirement. Almost no advisors touch the tax planning aspect of it, things like that. So that's if you need insurance, find an insurance agent. If you want or need pure investment management, go with a robo, or go with a real live breathing investment advisor who focuses on primarily or solely investments. If you want or need broader financial planning, retirement distribution planning, someone who wraps tax consideration into all this, then you need to search. You need to go, and I'll show you where. Then you need to start digging around some more to find someone that has the credentials, the background, the niche focus that you're looking for that suits you. That's where you then go. So once you have in your mind what you need and which sort of like prototype, which drawing a blank, what avatar of financial advisor best suit, who's the ideal looking acting advisor for you, now you can go find it, him or her. Where do you go to find advisors? Here we go. And anytime anyone on this forum or any other forum asks, these are always the sources I give. You will never see me. You'll never see me recommend any of the big brokers, insurance companies, or banks. So that precludes Merrill, Morgan, UBS, Edward Jones, Raymond James, Ameriprise, Equitable, Primerica, Northwestern, Chase, Wells Fargo. The list goes on and on. Why? Because none of them are fee only, and they can't be. I'm firmly believe, firmly support fee only. I personally am fee only in my business. Where do you go to find a fee-only advisor? Now, it's not to say there's bad people at these places. No, And most advisors I've met, and there's thousands of advisors that work at these big household names, they're genuinely good people. It's just they don't know any better because they come right out of school. They get recruited right into one of these sales roles. And to them, you know, that might be all they know of. It's not really the person that's the problem. It's the process. It's the company behind it. It's you know, it's the industry and how it's historically done things, how it's sold products for commission, how it you know, misused trust and things like that. Where am I going with this? So I'm not saying advisors at Merrill are bad people. Advisors at Morgan Stanley aren't bad people. They just work in my opinion, not the most efficient environments, not the most cost-effective environments. Think about the overhead Merrill Lynch has. It's massive. They got these big fancy buildings in prime real estate. They got national marketing campaigns. They got thousands of advisors. They have to manage the compliance cost alone. When you have to manage to the lowest common denominator knucklehead and what something stupid he or she does or says, imagine like the regulatory fines and the compliance fees these firms have. So Merrill, Morgan, UBS, whatever, they're not cheap. They charge you a lot. Is it justified? I don't think so, but they have massive amounts of overhead and they can charge you that much because people know them. You know, Merrill's been around 100 years. It's just the thundering herd of bulls with the emphasis on bull. There's inherent comfort and trust because they've always been there. So, but it doesn't mean it's the best for you. It doesn't mean it's the cheapest. It doesn't mean they're not selling you some expensive loaded piece of crap into your fund because they're getting a commission on it. All right, I'll stop. I'm talking bad about them. So the point is, none of those places are fee only. Therefore, you'll never see me recommend them because they're not in these fee only search places that I'm about to show you. Whew. All right, let me calm down for a second. So these three things here, these aren't companies. These are networks. These are networks of independent advisors who are each their own business, like I am. I'm a member of a few of these networks. I pay to be a member of them. These networks are a place where you can go to search for all advisors in that network. You can search by where the advisor is located, what his or her fee structure is, what their area of focus is, what their credentials and designations are, things like that. NAPFA, first one. This is the nation's largest organization of independent fee-only advisors. I don't know how many. I think it's a few thousand. I want to say 3,000 maybe, perhaps. So you can go to NAPFA, and anyone you see there will be regulated solely as an investment advisor. Now, that doesn't mean they only do investment management. Again, remember, people who are financial planners, their regulation tucks into or is bolted on investment advisor regulation. There is no standalone regulation for just like general financial advice givers. But anyway, people who are regulated solely as investment advisors, including just financial planners, will be fee only. So you can find them on NAPFA. Now, again, not every fee only person's here. This is only people who pay to be part of this network. And why do people pay? One, it's to get your name on the search portal. There's also other tools and like discounts on insurance and things and technology software that these networks give. So that's why people join. But anyway, you're not working with like a NAPFA employee. These are all independent advisors who pay to be part of this NAPFA network. So you can go there to search. Next is the Garrett Planning Network. And this one's been recommended by Consumer Reports. What's the difference? And you'll see advisors, the same advisor will be in multiple of these places. So Garrett, again, fee only, which is good. The common denominator with Garrett is everyone in Garrett needs to offer or has to offer their services on an hourly basis. So if you want or need only something hourly, Garrett's probably the best bet to go. So fee only, everyone there offers hourly. Now, hourly doesn't mean you can pay for just a half hour time. It's incredibly difficult, frankly, to run an advisory business doing a series of one-off, 2 to 4 hour engagements here or there. A lot of advisors that do hourly may have like a 5 to 10 hour minimum. So it may not work out. If you just have like a quick 3 questions you want to ask, you may not find someone who's willing to take you on for 2 hours worth of work. But nonetheless, Garrett's the spot you would look to do that search. And you can, again, search by specialization. So you want someone who specializes in student loans. You can go to Garrett. You know they're going to be fee only. And all these places, the people have to have CFP designation, which is good, which is important to me, in my opinion. You go to Garrett. You can search up, okay, I want someone near me in a 50-mile radius. I want someone who charges hourly, which Garrett will be. and I want someone who specializes in student loans, you can search in Garrett for someone who does college funding or student loans. Next, XY Planning Network. Similarly, fee only. Similarly, everyone has the CFP designation. The common denominator here used to be everyone in the network historically focused on working with clients in generations X and Y. So, people who's 20s, 30s, 40s, now 50s, Gen X is beginning of Gen X is in their 50s. That's why when XY Planning originally started, that was their focus. They realized there was a void of advisors working with folks younger than 60. So they started this network. Now they'll kind of take anyone, like I'm part of XY purely for the tech discounts that they give me. I really don't promote that I'm a member of XY. But point is, they'll let people like me who focus squarely on retirement planning in their network. So you'll find me if you go to XY, but I don't, most people go to XY to find because they're in their 30s or 40s or something, and they go there. But nonetheless, that's another spot to search. Two more. Alliance of Comprehensive Planners. What's this one? Similarly, fee only. Similarly, have to have the CFP designation. Common denominator here is that all these people will have tax background of some sort. A lot of people that are in this network will also do tax returns. Even if they don't, they often have good tax knowledge and will do some broader tax planning. Quick comment about taxes. So lots of people ask me, why can't I find an advisor who does any sort of tax planning? If you go to any of the big firms, it's because they're strictly prohibited from doing tax planning, because it's real easy to mess up tax advice, and there's real translatable financial consequences of giving someone bad tax advice. You tell a client to sell this because it's going to, do whatever for tax reasons, and they do it, and you got that wrong. Well, guess what? Their tax return now is $500 more that they owe in taxes because you gave bad advice. They can easily equate your advice, your bad advice, to a price. And so the big advisors, the big brokerages, insurance companies, and banks will not give tax advice for that reason, because it's too easy to mess up. And it goes back to the lowest common denominator knucklehead that they have to manage. Who knows how inept the most junior person is there, so they can't have that person spouting off tax advice. So you're not, unless you pay for the special tax experts at these big places, the general advisor you work with there isn't going to be able to give you tax advice. They'll say, go talk to your CPA or something. So, one second. Advisors in the Alliance of Comprehensive Planners will have, most of them will have tax knowledge, and they'll be willing and able to take on tax planning because they're able to, and because they have the knowledge in the background. Finally, you can go straight to the CFP board to find persons who have the CFP designation. Everyone on there will have the CFP designation, but these aren't all fee only, because anyone in the industry, insurance salespeople, security salespeople, investment advisors, they're able to get the CFP designation. So just because they have the CFP does not mean they're fee only. So I should probably actually take that one off, because all these other 4 search options I give, everyone there has to have the CFP designation already. So it's kind of redundant that I'm even saying the CFP as a 5th search tool. But anyway, that's another tool if you want to. The reason why I put it there was that, again, those first 4 will all be fee only. So you're not going to find anyone that has insurance licenses or brokerage licenses. To the extent you actually want or need to buy an insurance product or a brokerage product, and you want someone who can also do other financial planning or advisory, then that's when you'll search for the CFP, because that's where you can find people who do work at one of the big brokers or banks or insurance companies through the CFP. Because again, you don't need to be fee only to have the CFP designation. All right, final slide, and then I'll go through whatever comments you all have. Helpful resources. So I'm in New Jersey, but and this file is from the New Jersey Bureau of Securities, but it's an awesome file for anyone, anywhere, searching for an advisor. And I'll post this link, or I guess I can even, I'll share this somehow after the fact in the group, because I can't comment directly through this software. The New Jersey Bureau of Securities puts out a financial professional review questionnaire. It's a great 6 or 7 page questionnaire. All the questions you want and need to ask to anyone who calls himself or herself an advisor of any sort. Run through these questions with them. It's about how are they regulated, what licenses do they have, what regulatory complaints do they have? What products or services do they offer? How many clients do they have? Will they act in your best interest at all times? Are they legally required to act in your best interest at all times? Things like that. Great resource to use. Next, this one's kind of a cheesy answer, but just Google, like, how do I find a financial advisor? What to look for in a financial advisor? Searches like that will inevitably end you up at like reviews from Consumer Reports or at NAPFA or at one of these fee-only CFP searches. Chances are you search this up, you're probably not going to get funneled to a Merrill Lynch, to a Northwestern Mutual, or something like that. But I don't know, who knows? Maybe they pay a lot for Google search optimization, so they may actually bubble up. But anyway, you can do your research, just kind of, how do I find a good advisor? And then this is important, this last one. Check for prior complaints. Now, all these three different regulation types, insurance sales, brokerage sales, investment advisory, whenever formal complaints are filed with these regulatory bodies, they get documented. Now, they can get expunged or removed or whatever, but generally speaking, legitimate complaints do get filed, and they're viewable to the public. So if you're about to go buy insurance from someone and you want to know, his or her complaints, you can go search this link here. Now, the problem here is this will be against the company, not the salesperson in particular. I don't know of a way to search up individual insurance sales folks' backgrounds, but this is at least better than nothing. For securities brokers, FINRA Broker Check will have really good history. Where were they? Where were their licenses at? Which firms did they work at? Have they ever declared personal bankruptcy? Have there been customer complaints? Were they fined? How were those fines resolved, if at all? You can find all that on Broker Check. For investment advisors, they have the same thing. And here's the link here. And what's nice between Broker Check and investment advisors, those two are sort of joined. They're overseen jointly. So like if you search an advisor up in one place and he or she has records in both, you can toggle between the two and see their brokerage background and their investment advisory background. All right, that's that. Hopefully that was helpful. Let me now take a look at comments. I'll keep the screen share up because why not? All righty. Actually, no, I'll take the screen share away for now. I'll bring it back to just me. How about that? This slick new tool. Where are we at? 9:14. Okay. All right, I'll start. I guess this is the bottom. So starting most recently, it looks like. Meg asks, oh, hold on. I can do this. Boom, here we go. Hey, Meg, look, there you are on the screen. You're famous now. If someone was a broker but isn't anymore, and now they are an RIA, is that a red flag? No, that's a green flag. Well, could be. So, oh man, great question. No, lots. So the trend in the advisory world, and here's how financial advice started. Sit with me for this history lesson here. Remember I said financial planning, the giving of financial advice it didn't start as its own standalone industry. It's spawned from insurance sales, basically. So selling life insurance has been around a long time, decade, 100 years, 100 years, more than that actually. And it used to be insurance salesperson would go door to door, in 1940s, 1950s, ask to speak to the man of the house and say, hey, do you love your family? And inevitably the man would hopefully say yes. The insurance salesperson would say, well, then don't you want to buy insurance? If you die, they're taken care of. Boom, person sold. You sell a life insurance policy to them, done. And that worked. That was good enough to keep selling stuff to the public. Eventually, over time, whether because the door-to-door sales thing fell out of fashion or it became otherwise more difficult to sell life insurance, exactly no. But the insurance sales industry realized we can't be just selling insurance. We need to sort of get a hold into other aspects of their life. How do we do that? Well, let's offer free planning. Let's find out more about them, their wants, their needs, their goals, their wishes, their financial circumstances, to give them some broader advice. Well, guess what? That broader sort of diligence into the client was really just to find other ways to sell a product, to meet some need. But that's how financial planning was born. It was sort of like it was a tool to find ways to sell more stuff. So it's not until fairly recently, let's call it the last 20 years, give or take, that like stripping out the giving of financial advice as its own thing started to become its own business. Along the way, it wasn't just with insurance anymore. It started with investments as well. And investment managers have been around a long time, where all they did was manage your investments. Well, they're now realizing pure investment management, again, cheap, easy, and commoditized. There's a lot of really good competition doing it for much cheaper and much better, and getting returns that are as good, if not better, than the people trying to pick stocks, which is futile most times. So traditional investment advisors are realizing we got to offer more to justify charging 1% of assets every year. So they start throwing in financial planning as well. Again, financial planning, not its own standalone thing. It's like a value add attached to investment management. But now financial planning is getting sort of stripped out. There are lots of pure financial planners who don't necessarily want or need to manage your investments. I think it helps if they do, but don't have to. But definitely disjointed and disconnected from selling insurance and selling brokered products. So to your question, Meg, no, I think that this is a positive trend, actually, that people are leaving the commissioned sales, insurance pushing world, mutual fund pushing world, dropping the sales background and becoming true advice givers, true advisors. So that's when and why you would see someone used to be a broker, dropped it, is now investment advisor only. That's the right way to do it, in my opinion. And the industry is definitely trending in that direction. So no, Meg, not a red flag at all. What would be a red flag, and what you definitely want to check, Meg, is their history of regulatory complaints. You can go to Broker Check, for example. Just because they dropped their brokerage license doesn't mean they can just walk away from their spotty past, if they have a spotty past, and dings against them on their record. You'll still be able to see that on Broker Check, Meg. So great question. Alrighty. Next, Facebook user. If someone you are looking up on the broker website has an assault note, oh, there we go, from 8 to 10 years ago, but is that something to be concerned about? On the website, it says underneath it was dismissed, but wondering why it would still be on there if dismissed. I have a few other people that can verify he's a good guy and done a good job for them. Yeah, that depends. People have their issues, their run-ins, in the past, whether it's just you're young and dumb or some other life circumstances. It doesn't mean they're bad people. It doesn't mean they're on the take. It doesn't mean they're underhanded. You would definitely want to know the circumstances around it. Maybe it was a bar fight, not to say we all get in bar fights, but maybe it was nothing more than the guy got drunk and got stupid and punched someone and got arrested. Criminal type complaints like that go and may stay on your record. I don't know exactly how FINRA treats them, but they may stay on there a long time. If people like him, if you talk with him or her and you're comfortable with the answer, don't let that stop you. Another example, and there's a guy, he's public about it, so I don't think he'd mind them sharing this. I won't share his name, but there's an advisor, he's been on podcasts, talks about his past. When he was in college, he had a bit of a contentious family life growing up, if I remember correctly. When he was in college, he had some narcotics. It was amphetamines or something. I don't know. Party drugs. Not to trivialize it, but party drugs to college kids that he got, and they were illegal. He's not saying they weren't. And he wasn't a dealer, but he sold a couple pills to a friend of his. Just a friend's like, "Hey, can I have some?" He's like, "Yeah, give me $20." Right? He didn't have this massive drug dealing operation, but just stupid things 20-year-olds do and don't think much of it. He got I don't know how. I don't remember the story, but got arrested. I think did some jail time because it was like a class 1 or schedule 1 narcotic that he dealt. He sold drugs technically. Did his time, paid his fine, whatever, when he was in college. That's on his record for life. So you look him up, it's going to say, whatever, drug conviction. I don't know what it says, but is he a bad person? No, he did something dumb as a kid. He admits it. He did his time. He's had a spotless record since. He's an awesome guy, super sharp. I like what he says, what he does, and the business he runs. So I'd be plenty comfortable with him. But to your point, that's a huge red flag, and it's definitely worth asking, looking into when you see something like that. But it's not necessarily a deal breaker. Sorry, I should have put this up. I forgot I have this tool. This was a question I was just I was commenting on. Definitely check people's records always. Depending what you see, may or may not be bad. And even if there are customer complaints, not a good sign, not something you want to see. But there are times where clients, something went sour, markets tanked like they did in 08, 09. There were lots of customer complaints then, and there were bad products that were sold, but not in all cases. Sometimes just the market did bad things. And people complained. They're like, you didn't tell me this product was going to do this. So they filed a complaint. Well, guess what? That's now on the person's FINRA broker record. Now, hopefully it got expunged. There's a trial type process where you can discuss it and arbitrate it and whatever. And these things do get thrown off if it was shown it's not a legitimate complaint or whatever it was, whatever. But nonetheless, there are complaints that aren't necessarily bad or don't mean someone's a bad person. So you have to look into it and ask the questions. All right. Facebook user, what are typical fee-only charges for comprehensive retirement planning? Great question, but there is no typical, unfortunately, as you may have found, assuming you've been searching. It really all depends. A lot of advisors still, unfortunately, tie their services to the size of your investments, which presupposes they manage your investments. But even if they say they focus on planning, and maybe they do lots of really good planning about all aspects of your financial life. And Dave Fultz, this is coming back to your question, what's a good advisor do? It's all this other stuff, the emotional help, the distribution planning, the taxes, the estate planning advice, the insurance advice, the college funding advice, whatever, the budgeting advice. That's the value of a good advisor. A lot of advisors still will require you to have assets with them to manage. They'll charge you a percentage of that. That percentage ranges from typically 0.8 to about 1. Could be higher, could be lower, but that's the typical. And then the more assets you have, they'll drop it down. So if you have $3 million, you're not going to be paying 1%. It'll be dropped down to like 0.7 or whatever. It all depends. But point is, a lot of advisors still anchor their fees to your investment size, which I think is terrible, but still the predominant model, partly because that's the way it always was. Other advisors charge hourly, decent hourly rates, $200 to $400 for comprehensive, like one-time plans. Anywhere from like $500 on the crazy low end, which I think is insane, to probably $2,500, $3,000 is about the sweet spot, I'd say, for a good comprehensive plan. And then there comes a time, and it doesn't make them bad people for doing it. Some advisors who just have more business than they know what to do with, and they don't want to do plans or doing these one-time plans aren't the most efficient use of their time. They'll just charge really high fees for it because they'll do, like, I've seen one-time plans $6,000 or more, in some cases pushing 10 grand. It's just like, if you want to pay me that much, I'll do it. Otherwise, it's not for me. So it all depends. And the more complex your life is, the hairier or the more expensive it will be. So if you have this huge business conglomerate, it's not going to be $3,000 for a plan. It's going to be tens of thousands of dollars, hopefully, if you got this massive like empire of a business. But the typical sort of couple, figure $3,000 for a plan. If you want just ongoing planning, not specifically investment management, not just a one and done financial plan, but ongoing planning, it all depends on the stage of life you're in and how complex your life is. A lot of advisors in the XY Planning Network work with people in their 20s and 30s. They'll charge like $100 a month, basically a subscription to just like ask me questions as you have them. Other advisors are they're still charging $5 to 10 grand a year, just breaking it down into a monthly subscription. So pay me $400 or $500 a month, $600 a month, and that's my financial planning fee. So really all depends, whoever it is that posted this question. You just gotta do your research, ask your questions. Now, hopefully today's presentation gave you all the food for thought for the things you need to be looking for and asking. Next, what's this? Facebook user, thank you for the excellent talk. My pleasure. Can you comment on how to find a CPA? That's a great question. I can't. I frankly don't. I assume CPA, you mean just like to do your taxes, or do you mean like to do bookkeeping? Do you have a business that you actually want or need, like business accounting? That's a different story. Honestly, I don't really know. I mean, each state has, you can search the CFP board of accountancy board or whatever it's called, CPA accountancy board. You can go about it that way, but otherwise I'm not really sure. I should know that. That's a good question. Recommendations, I guess, that's another good way. All right. Oh, Lynn too. Lynn, thank you for your adding your name in picture here. For households that may need estate planning besides financial planning, is it recommended to find a CFP first, then see an estate planning lawyer, or find a team that can create a holistic plan? Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, everyone needs estate planning, Lynn. Some people's estate planning is much more complex than others, like special needs planning, business planning, high net worth, generational wealth and tax minimization planning with stuff like that. That's some second level stuff that definitely requires in-depth legal, attorney involvement. If that's your case, then yes, you'd probably want like a tag team place that specializes in high net worth, or at least complex financial and estate planning combined. But for most people, generally the process I would recommend is start with the CFP. Consider the CFP, consider the planner kind of like the quarterback. A fee-only planner, again, can't sell you insurance, but that doesn't mean he or she shouldn't be giving guidance and advice on, hey, you should probably consider getting some term insurance or whatever insurance, because if you die tomorrow, your plan's destroyed. So CFP kind of does that holistic view and can then help you, or at least recommend you, or coordinate for you, working with an estate planning attorney to draft up and do the nitty-gritty of your estate planning docs. An insurance salesperson to go buy insurance, a mortgage broker if you want to, you need to refinance a mortgage, a Medicare insurance broker if you're of Medicare age and want or need to shop around for supplement plans, stuff like that. So a good advisor, Dave Fault's your question, a good advisor helps tie together and give guidance on all this, but can't do every single piece. That's where you need to work with the others. But it's not necessarily is or isn't better to find a one-stop shop versus not. Lynn, good question. Facebook user, any thoughts on financial advisors associated with American funds? Yeah, good question. So someone else I saw commented, the question was just Fidelity, Schwab, Vanguard, question mark. I guess that comment was, the gist of that was along the lines of like, what about working with the paid advisors there? I don't know much about American funds and their services, so I can't speak to that, whomever posted this. But regarding like Fidelity and Vanguard has its personal advisor services, where I think it's 0.3% of your assets. What do? It's a lot better than nothing. They got the investment stuff down pat, obviously. I'm a Vanguardian at heart. I invest in the Vanguard mindset. I'm fully on board with what they do, and kudos to them for investment management. The rest of their planning, fairly basic. They don't give tax advice. They don't get into detailed distribution planning of, you're in retirement, how and when and why do you pull money from your accounts. But for people with kind of minimal needs that just want or minimal willingness or ability to do it, using one of the advisors at Vanguard or Fidelity may not be a bad idea. I've had people who've worked at Fidelity and aren't impressed. Clients of mine, Fidelity really just focuses on the investments, from what I'm told at least. And again, sort of fall short when it comes to taxes, which they all do. They fall short when it comes to taking money out of Fidelity, like spending down your assets. These big custodians kind of fall short there. So I don't know. Could be good, could be bad. I really don't know about American funds in particular. Facebook user, can you share the link for FINRA broker check? Yeah. Oh yeah. Good. Cody did. Here you go for everyone. I don't think you can click on this screen, but this is in the comments now under this post. So thank you, Cody. All right. Looks like one more question here. Ooh, Ingrid, nice flowers in your picture. So Ingrid asks, I have access to ACO financial planning as a benefit through work. Am I better off finding a local planner for retirement needs, or is ACO a good start? It's a good start. I would always, I don't want to say always, but if it's a benefit, use it. Take advantage of it. Presumably, it's free or at least heavily subsidized. It's better than nothing. If you're not comfortable in your willingness and ability to do it yourself, I don't want to say any help is better than no help, but places like this, especially if it's ACO is a big legitimate, I know of them, I would definitely look into it. It's worth doing. If for whatever reason down the road you find they're not answering questions thoroughly, or again, tax and distribution planning, this is where they may fall short, then it may be time to search around elsewhere for someone who does focus on that. But probably not a bad idea to use any of these free or subsidized advisory benefits you have available to you. Good question. And all right, so it looks like so Cody here. Yep. So Cody, right. Yeah, this is a good one. Thank Cody. Good point. So to the question about where to find a CPA, a bit off topic, but in order to do tax returns for compensation, there's lots of people who do unregulated, and it's a complete sham. But in order to do tax returns for compensation, you need to have at least a PTIN, which is a number the IRS gives you. And that doesn't imply any level of credential or skills or experience. It just means you're not a criminal, and it means you're current on your own taxes. That's it. That's all you need. That's a super low bar to meet. But you can search for what's called a credentialed preparer. That means someone who not just has a PTIN, but is a CPA, is an IRS enrolled agent, or is something called the annual filing season participant, which means you just took a boatload of continuing education. You can find, using this link Cody posted, you can find all these folks who have one of those designations. I completely forgot about that. Thanks, Cody. So that's the spot to go if you want to find a credentialed, not just a fly-by-night chop shop tax preparer, but a credentialed CPA, enrolled agent, or annual filing season participant tax return preparer. Thank you for that, Cody. Great share. Man, this tool's so cool with these comments. And finally, one last comment here. Wow, 9:30. Okay, this was a hot one. Paul, so if I wanted a second set of eyes on my portfolio, would you recommend Robo Advisor or Vanguard Fidelity? Not sure if one is better than the other. Paul, I don't think a Robo would. They don't do second set of eyes. Robo's like, at least I don't think they do. Robo's like, you give us your portfolio. We'll tell you, we'll recommend how it should be invested, then we'll invest it for you. I don't know. I've never engaged one myself, so I don't know if part of like the intro process with them is they'll review and tell you what they think. You can try. It's worth a call. As far as Vanguard or Fidelity, same story, right? And maybe as a convenience, as part of their sales process, they may say, sure, we'll take a look. But don't expect any actionable advice or any actionable recommendations from them, Paul. That they're going to want you to move your money with them for them to manage it. Okay, unless my software is failing me, it looks like that's it for the comments. So I will wrap it there. Thank you all. Hopefully you found this new format enjoyable. I sure as heck had fun with it. I'm still got to iron it out a little bit. Next week's topic, a lot of good special guests coming up in the next few months. Next week, for those of you who follow Roger Whitney and his Retirement Answer Man podcast, you may, you almost certainly know of his Rock Retirement Club. One of the main coaches / educators / focuses on the soft side of retirement, BW, Beachwalker, aka Kevin Lyles, will be my special guest next week. We'll do a cool little split screen here where he'll be discussing some of the soft side of retirement, like what things to consider in preparing for retirement. Not the financial things, the life, the emotional, the sort of sense of being things, sense of purpose. Real good topic. Not my wheelhouse. I'm the numbers guy. I realize the importance of the softer side, but definitely that's Kevin's lane. That's what he does. So that'll be next week's presentation. Hopefully to see you all then. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, Happy New Year. That's a wrap. See you next week. Thank you.